Are you on? But you're not up. They're using your screen right now?
I don't know. We
No.
never know.
All right, taking it as a bump shot now. Brittany, that Wendy's that you're talking about where that shooting happened is completely on fire. We watched what started off as a small fire has now taken over that Wendy's. You can see the flames there. It got pretty intense over in that area once that fire got bigger. A lot of people, of course, ran away from that area. We were a little bit closer and decided to take a safer distance away from that fire as well. One thing that's changed is that Georgia State Patrol now has the road blocked off. All of this traffic that's trying to go towards that Wendy's is now being rerouted to turn back around. The interstate also is, you cannot get on the interstate and you can't come off at this University Avenue exit. Earlier tonight, we saw protesters on the interstate. They shut down the traffic, and while traffic is moving on the interstate now, it is moving a lot slower. You can still see a lot of Georgia State Patrol troopers are still on the interstate as that traffic is moving. So again, back live out here, that Wendy's where that shooting happened is on fire. We heard earlier from Atlanta Fire that they are trying to get to that area, but of course it is a very dangerous situation. Brittany?
Good job. pit bull just jumped at me. His nose touched my chest.
stand by. Okay, perfect. Check, check, check. 1098-765-4321. The Wendy's good. All right, perfect. All right, coming to us now. Yeah, Brittany, sorry about that. What you're looking at now is the Wendy's is still on fire. We still have not seen Atlanta fire trucks be able to make it over to that area. From what I'm seeing from where we are, it looks like there are more people than before over in that area, closer to the Wendy's. When the Wendy's first caught on fire, we sort of saw everyone running away from that area as the fire grew, but it looks like people are starting to move back into that area. Over here on this side of the interstate, we're starting to see traffic back up. There's nowhere to go. People can't go towards the Wendy's and they can't get on the interstate, and they're not able to get off of the interstate. So we're just sort of seeing people stopped here. For a while there, cars were turning around and going the other way, but I don't know if we can see the cars here. Everyone is just stopped and that traffic is backed up. And you can see Georgia State Patrol there does have that roadway blocked off. And of course, people are walking up to try and get a closer look. Again, that Wendy's where the shooting happened is still on fire. Tonight, we've watched that fire grow. And it looks like more people are over in that area now on the ground. And of course, a pretty large police presence is out here as well. So we're just sort of waiting to see what happens. We're waiting to see if the fire trucks are going to be able to make it over there. We're waiting to see if police are going to do anything. And we'll, of course, keep you updated throughout this newscast. Brittany. Rick, that's right. I'm not sure who started that fire. We just know that at one point everyone just sort of ran over to that Wendy's, and then shortly after we saw a little bit of smoke and heard of a small fire that was inside of the restaurant. Is from what we saw. We of course don't know where exactly that fire started, but people were throwing things at the Wendy's, and then that's when we saw a smaller fire that eventually grew into what we're seeing now. I mean, from here you can't even see the Wendy's anymore, and all I'm seeing is just smoke everywhere. Yeah, so that first night that you're talking about, that first night of protesting, when we saw downtown businesses, the window shattered, this is probably the most similar to what I saw that night and what you saw that night as well. So things definitely escalated quickly throughout the day from the time we first got out here and we saw, just one group protesting to what we're seeing right now.
Is that the Brooks family has retained attorneys. Elson Stewart, who is also representing several other families with similar cases, as well as Justice Miller. We do have a soundbite from their press conference earlier today.
You can't say he ran off with a weapon that killed somebody when you say it's not dead. You can't say you don't have other options. Where was he going to go? He was barely walking away. You could have boxed him in, support pain in, I think, 2 minutes. You would be boxed in.
Can you turn me off, please?
Two cars.
Hey, is that anybody's car parked in the road? The one that's turned off, parked in the middle, blocking traffic. We're gonna have to tow it. Hey guys, we're not going to do a U-turn. Watch out, watch out.
You guys focus on traffic and we'll focus. You can't go.
He's over here.
They have kind of stayed in that area where you do see also police in riot gear at this time.
And you've been there for a few hours now. Can you just take us through, for people who are just joining us now, take us through the developments over the last few hours in terms of the protesters? It started very peacefully. People were chanting in front of the Wendy's, just a group of people, very emotional this evening before all that fire started. Can you just take us through in terms of the mood there and how it continued to develop throughout the evening?
Yeah, so by the time we came on to University Avenue there was a huge group of protesters who were leaving that area. There were 2 police officers who were blocking the road, who were kind of helping them as far as traffic goes, helping them to make sure that they could get through that area. And then when you got closer to the Wendy's, and this is probably about an hour and a half ago, when you got closer to the Wendy's, you did see that there were small fires in the parking lot and around that area. And then eventually another group of protesters started to leave that area, and they were warning other people who were trying to drive forward, warning them, no, turn around, this is not safe at this point, we're leaving this area, you need to leave this area too, you don't want, you know, your windows to be smashed out or anything like that, make sure you turn around and head the other way. So that's when those fires continued to grow right there. We did have a couple of protesters come up to us and tell us as well, hey, it's probably not safe for you to be there. So we took them up on that warning, and we left that area, and that's when we came right here. When we got to this area, you really saw those flames start to kind of, you know, just grow and grow within a 30-minute time period. They really, you could see them from all the way back here, the flames and the smoke in the sky there. And there were a lot of people who were around here who were, you know, they were screaming, you know, from way back here, they were screaming to let it burn. And they kept saying, let it burn, let it burn. And, you know, kind of directing all of that energy towards that, you know, that Wendy's, and just really kind of saying at the time that, like, they really didn't care about that spot because it was where someone had died earlier today. So once that fire was down, the mood kind of changed, and you know, some of the people in this area, they left this area, but as you can see, there is still that group under the underpass right there that are still in that area right now, either still continuing to protest or waiting to see what happens next. There are police in riot gear at that area as well. Again, we can't hear anything that they're saying because we're pretty far back, so we can't hear if they're continuing to chant or having conversations or what's happening in that area right now. But we do know that the flames are down. There's a lot of Georgia State Police out here who are helping to direct traffic to make sure that no cars drive through that area where people are still standing under the bridge over there, closer to the Wendy's.
And Hope, this all happened, this officer-involved shooting happened just 24 hours ago. The police chief has resigned, and the mayor has called for one of the officers, the one who fired the shots, to be fired. The mayor also promises some reforms in the police department as they start to search for a new police chief. So you've been there this evening. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to talk to any of the protesters. Emotions are raw. However, we've already seen some action just in the last 24 hours. Any indication as to what they're asking for now? Are they saying this is enough, this is a good start? What are they saying?
Haven't been able to talk to a lot of protesters out here tonight. I have had quite a few people reach out to me on social media who, you know, they are happy that that some changes are being taken place, but they're still saying, you know, that's not enough, and there still is that distrust right now in the police department. So, you know, there were a couple of people on my social media who were tweeting at me as I was sending out videos and pictures of things that were happening earlier with Mayor Bottoms and former Chief Shields resigning, who were saying, you know, that's great, but that's not really good enough. There are still people who are wanting to, you know, who are still calling for accountability, full accountability, with the 6 officers that were fired, or excuse me, 4 officers that were fired and 6 officers who were fired for the tasing of Messiah Young and Tanaya Pilgrim. And then there are people who were out here tonight who were, you know,
yes,
who are very upset and still do not have any trust towards the police department. Conversations that I was hearing from several people out here. So I think that from what I'm hearing and what people are telling me on social media, that, you know, this is still why they're continuing to protest every day, because they're not seeing that change as quickly as they would like it on the long term, outside of just an immediate reaction to something that happens on the day of.
It's interesting, Hope, as I was listening to you talk, and you were talking about some of the people standing by about the Wendy saying, let it burn, you know, let it burn. One of the most famous expressions of the 1960s came out of the 1965 riots in Los Angeles in Watts, where the phrase "burn baby burn" became part of American culture after that, resulted in $40 million worth of damage of that time to Watts. But it is a phrase that certainly harkens back to a very difficult time in America, one of which all these years later we seem to be looking at once again. Hope Ford, thank you. We want to go to Elwyn Lopez now as she takes a closer look at the surveillance video.
It was Friday night at a crowded Wendy's drive-thru in Southwest Atlanta. Witnesses started recording when they saw a struggle between 27-year-old Rayshard Brooks and two APD officers.
At some point, Mr. Brooks actually gets the upper hand. That's when he gets up and runs away.
GBI investigators say Brooks also got a hold of one of the officers' tasers. Surveillance video then shows Brooks running away from the officers as they chased after him.
You have one that looks from the video that he has his own taser out, and it seems like he's trying to tase Mr. Brooks, but then Mr. Brooks turns. It looks like he attempts to fire the taser that he has, and then he is shot by police.
Criminal defense attorney T. Greg Doucette says it's unclear by simply looking at this video whether Brooks was shot before or after he turned his body towards the officers.
Sometimes the force of getting shot with a bullet will cause the body to turn.
Also unclear from the video is which officer shoots Brooks.
It's difficult to tell without better sound and closer video or body cam footage.
Doucette says there is debate as to whether the officers' actions were an appropriate use of deadly force.
If it's something where he's shot after he turns and tries to fire the taser, what the courts will say is that's probably a justified use of force. We're not going to second guess what the police decided in that split-second decision.
Let me take a look here at Aeon.
And that was Elwin Lopez reporting for us there on the surveillance video that's at the center of this officer-involved shooting in Southwest Atlanta this evening. All right, we have other news that's developing here in the metro. Atlanta police are looking for the driver of a pickup truck involved in a drive-by shooting. This happened near Edgewood. It left 2 people dead and at least 5 other people injured. And police are telling us this evening a person shot into a crowd of people on the 60th block of Mason Avenue. This is in the northeast area. APD says that they arrived there at that scene and found 5 people were injured and they had gunshot wounds. They have since learned at least 2 others were also shot at that location and 2 people have died from that incident. The others are in stable condition this evening. APD, though, wants you to help them in this investigation. You see that pickup there on your screen? They want you to take a look at this and be on the lookout for it. They are looking for the person who was in that pickup truck this afternoon. And if you know anything at all about this vehicle, they're asking you to call the Atlanta Police Department. The person shooting looks to be coming from the passenger side of this vehicle. And police are offering up to $2,000 for the arrest of the suspect. So if you know anything at all about this incident, make sure you call Atlanta Police.
No justice, no peace.
Now that's chanting from both the Roswell community and the leader of the police department. Earlier today, Chief James Conroy joined Eagles Nest Church Pastor Lee Jenkins for a protest at Roswell City Hall. We were taking a look at the video from that event there. It was called a solidarity march. It was focused on speaking out against racism and police brutality. And they also took to the streets in Henry County for the walk.
We're about to hit again?
Yes.
University Avenue in southwest Atlanta. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms accepted the resignation of Chief Erica Shields, former chief, who will be replaced on an interim basis by Rodney Bryant. Here's the mayor.
Chief Shields has offered to immediately step aside as police chief so that the city may move forward with urgency in rebuilding the trust so desperately needed throughout our communities.
And we're continuing to cover the fallout from this officer-involved shooting in southwest Atlanta. Hope Ford has been at the scene all afternoon long, and right now, Hope, you are on the other side of the Wendy's location that's been burning for at least an hour now. What are you seeing? What's happening now? It seems quieter.
It is a little bit quieter because a lot of the people who were back here watching earlier have moved up. We moved up as well to a little bit closer to under the underpass. And as we moved up, I can actually, I mean, we're still pretty far away and I can smell the smoke all the way back here. Right now, but we've moved up a little bit closer. You can see that there is a huge group that is up there right now who are closer to that chevron on the left there, and the Texaco that's on the right there as well. This entire road right now is blocked with Georgia State Patrol not allowing any cars to go through there. People are free to walk into that area because we've seen quite a few people do that so far. So right now there's that huge group that is back there right now. We do see signs up in the air. We're not close enough to hear what they're saying, but we do every once in a while hear some yells or something like that, but obviously we can't make out exactly what those conversations are right now. We do know that there are police in riot gear who are on the other side of that line right there, and we don't see any more flames. Obviously the fire has been put out at the Wendy's there. There's still a little bit of smoke in the air, not nearly as much as what it was just probably 30 minutes ago before those fire trucks were finally able to make their way into that area to put the fire out. So a little bit quieter right now because everyone seems to be moving in that general direction to continue to protest. So that's what we're seeing right at this moment.
Indication at all that any of them will be leaving soon? I know we don't have a curfew in place tonight, but have you gotten any indication at all from your vantage point as to what they plan to do? Do they plan to stay there all night long, or are they planning to leave soon?
They haven't gotten any indication of when they're going to leave that area, because we have seen more people come to this area. They've either parked their cars or they've walked from some of the neighborhoods on the other side back here. They've walked to this area to join in with that crowd over there. So, and we haven't seen a lot of people leave, I will say that. We've seen a couple people who were in the cars after the fire went out who left, but for the most part we haven't seen anybody from really that group up there leave from that area.
And from the video we're seeing over your shoulder, we haven't seen any officers actually move in on the protester. They seem to just be standing around peacefully, as far as we can tell from this vantage point. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, I haven't seen too many officers push back towards the protesters right there. So. And we haven't seen anyone push towards them as well. So this is what we've seen for several days, just in different locations. Really, we've seen this for the past 15 days in different locations since last Friday, in Centennial Park all the way up to now, where we see, for a long time that will be those moments where police are up against a line of protesters or rioters, whatever is happening at the moment. We've seen that all day, every day since then. So that seems to be exactly what we're witnessing here right now as well. We haven't seen anybody run from that area. We haven't seen any tear gas or anything like that deployed in this area right now. Again, we're pretty far back, so we can't tell what exactly if there's any tension happening over there, or if it's just people, standing around. So we're not able to tell that, but it is something that we've seen every day and night for the past couple of weeks.
So Hope, I'm trying to look at this picture, trying to understand it. So you have many of the people that are just milling around. Are the Atlanta police in front of these people? Are they beyond what we're able to see? Are they in a line? Is that what we're looking at?
So I believe they're in a line with those riot shields on the other side, going towards where the Wendy's was at the time, or where the Wendy's was. And so that group that you're seeing, they're closer to us, whereas the police line is closer, it's farther away from us. So that's where we are at our vantage point at this point in time.
So the question is, how long will this standoff go on? Does it get cleared at midnight? We are about 22 minutes away. And, we have seen that in the past as midnight approaches, but who's to say how long this may go on tonight?
Yeah, we have seen in a couple of other areas, even last night, I was in the Centennial Olympic Park area, and there were protesters who were marching back at 11 o'clock at night. There was of course, no police presence in that area at that time because the police kind of left that area. But we've seen, since the curfew has been lifted, we've seen many of these protests go into 11 and 12 o'clock, and those groups kind of dwindle down. Tonight, again, there's no curfew, but with the tensions high in the air, it's really hard to tell if they'll stay out here, until 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 or 3. And one of the things is what would cause the police to push back on the protesters or the people who are out here, unless there was a curfew implemented or unless things became violent.
And Hope, we're not seeing any vehicles pass through that area. Is it because police have shut down the roads there, or is it the protesters who are now in the way of traffic?
No, so on this line where we are, we can kind of move the camera so we can see the trooper cars right here. So you have all of these trooper vehicles who are out here right now. There's troopers who are behind us who are redirecting traffic. Anyone who's trying to drive down here, they're turning people around and sending them the other way. And then both sides of the interstate are also blocked off with trooper vehicles right now. So they're not letting any cars go down that area right now, at least on this side of where we are.
And we asked you a little earlier whether you could see any damage from any other businesses in that area. I know you're a little farther away now. Any more information on that?
So we did have one of my coworkers who was at the Chevron that you see up there earlier today, just a few up until really 20 minutes ago. So he was right there, so he could get a better look of what was happening at that point in time. And he said he didn't really see any damage to any other buildings outside of that Wendy's. There are some other gas stations that are on the other side. So from our vantage point, it looked huge, and the fire looked huge, and it looked like it could have affected those businesses. He was a little bit closer, and he didn't see any damage to anything else outside of that Wendy's.
All right, Hope, thank you so much. Stay safe out there, and we'll break back in and check in with you as soon as you have any new developments in your area.
All right, we want to stay in the area around University Avenue, where it has been the place tonight that has seen a lot of action, if you will, certainly with the torching of the Wendy's and protesters on the I-75-85 freeway, which is a short proximity away from the Wendy's restaurant, all protesting the shooting death of 27-year-old Rayshard Brooks that occurred in that parking lot at Wendy's last night around 10:30, 10:45. That has resulted in the resignation of Atlanta Police Chief Erica Shields, and has yielded a new interim police chief by the name of Rodney Bryant. There's a national search now that is underway for a full-time police chief for Atlanta, and we do not know if Officer Bryant, Mr. Bryant, will be among those candidates who A, will be considered for the job, or B, that will want the job as well, Faith.
Yeah, and we haven't actually heard from Chief Shields since her resignation in terms of actually stepping in front of the camera and speaking to the public since her resignation. She wasn't at the mayor's press conference. We saw the interim police chief instead, who was there at the news conference this afternoon. But we did get a statement from now former Atlanta Police Chief Erica Shields, and she basically said that the APD, the Atlanta Police Department, still has her full support, and the mayor also has her full support. Of course, she's still staying with the city of Atlanta in a different role. We just don't know what that role looks like just yet. We want to head back out to the area of the Wendy's where the officer-involved shooting happened last night. We have our Doug Richards, who's there closer to the scene. And Doug, you've been watching as the firefighters put out the flames at the Wendy's. Any updates on that?
Yes, and we're just going to zoom past me because I'm standing in the dark because we've had some power issues out here. But what you see here, first of all, are 5 Atlanta police officers who were brought into the scene in a SWAT team truck. And they were brought in advance of the 3 Atlanta fire trucks that were brought in to extinguish the flames at the Wendy's. The Wendy's had burned out of control for the better part of an hour before the fire department got here, and the reason they didn't get here is because the scene wasn't secure. So the SWAT team folks arrived, they tossed a few canisters of what appeared to be tear gas, dispersed the crowd, then the fire trucks came in. The fire folks put water on the flames for the better part of the last 45 minutes or so, rolled up the hoses just a few minutes ago. Looks like they are fixing to go, as we say here in Georgia. And that presumably means that this small but impressive-looking police presence here will also likely move on. And at that point, it's unclear how this neighborhood will react. The Wendy's fire was impressive. It burned. It was engulfed in flames, as you can see in the video, for, as we said, the better part of an hour. It's unclear how the fire was started. Nobody has admitted to actually starting that fire to us. However, the crowd, as we said, was rather fiery, and it's quite possible that somebody in the crowd had something to do with starting the fire. I'm sure an arson investigator will get to the bottom of that in the coming days. And as we conclude our remarks here, we can see the fire department leaving. We can also see people, bystanders, taunting the police officers here, whose jobs are to make sure that the fire department can get out of here safely, and perhaps other activities as well. Back to you.
And Doug, as large as that fire was, as incredible as it was, the Atlanta Fire Department is telling us that they don't believe anyone was inside that building. Do we have any word on whether there were any other injuries in that area related to that fire?
I don't have any word about that, but I was within eyeshot of the fire for much of the time that it burned, and I did not see anybody hurt. I haven't seen, there have been no ambulances in here. And I haven't seen anybody treated for any injuries. It looked like the place went up, people kept their distance, a few people posed for selfies, but otherwise didn't injure anybody, to my knowledge.
Now I'm seeing to the right of the screen that there's a vehicle that looks to be, oh, okay, it's a SWAT vehicle. I thought it was a military vehicle, but it seems to be a SWAT vehicle. So those are the SWAT officers who were there at the scene trying to prevent the protesters from getting closer to the building?
They were there yes, they were there, yes, they were ordering protesters off of that side of the street onto the other side of the street, which is where we are. So they were not only securing the property so that firefighters could work there unfettered, but also were securing the streets so that the fire trucks could show up and the fire department personnel could do their jobs without being harassed. And they succeeded, as best I can tell.
Yeah, from what we're seeing now, we see a few people milling about in front of you here. But are you closer to the large group of protesters we're seeing from the other side of the Wendy's building where we have our Hope Forward? Are you closer to that group of protesters?
Not particularly close to that group. Those folks are probably a tenth of a mile to my west. Which they're over at Pryor Street and University, and there's a Wendy's here. There's a BP gas station, and then there's that intersection. So we're not far from there, but yeah, and in fact, a lot of the folks who were watching the fire operation here are now headed in that direction to congregate perhaps a little bit with the group that's hanging out there that you referenced.
And I'm not sure if your photographer can hear me, but we just saw some the Atlanta Fire Department move out of the area as far as we could tell here. Can he zoom in a little bit to that building? It
Yes.
looks to be gutted.
They're asking if you could zoom into the Wendy's building. And it is all but gutted, I would say. I suspect that it will be deemed a complete loss. It appears that the roof caved in, the equipment inside was destroyed. As we said, I mean, that thing burned out of control for the better part of an hour, and there was anything in there that could burn seemed to burn at least a little bit. More than likely it burned to a crisp. So yes, the Wendy's will need to be rebuilt if they decide to open operations here again.
And it looks like protesters left a message there on the building. From what I can see, it says R.I.P. Richard. Again, if you're just joining us, this is the location.
Yes.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah. Yeah, on a sort of obelisk in front of the building at sidewalk level. It also is spray painted on the building itself. There's also signs that have been left on the property that say that reference Richard Brooks.
All right, Doug, thank you so much for staying on top of that. Stay safe out there. All right, so during a news conference earlier today, attorneys for the family of Richard Brooks said that the officer who shot him should be charged for an unjustified use of deadly force. He referenced Georgia law to justify that claim. Take a listen.
In Georgia, a taser is not a deadly weapon. That's the law. That's what the cops are trained to do. It's not a deadly weapon. I've had cases where officers have used tasers on victims, and they argue with us in court that tasers aren't deadly, that tasers aren't harmful. That's the case law here, that tasers are not deadly weapons. So before we even hear from their lawyers, who are going to say the same old thing they always say, you cannot have it both ways. You can't say he ran off with a weapon that could kill somebody when you say it's not deadly. So we agree with the mayor saying that the officer that fired the officer that fired his weapon should be terminated, and he should also be prosecuted. The family met with Paul Howard, and they've opened their investigation, and I can even say we want justice, but I don't even care anymore. I don't even know what that is. And I've been doing this for 15 years. I don't know what justice is anymore. Is it getting them arrested? Is it getting somebody fired? Is it a chief stepping down? I know that this isn't justice, what's happening in society right now.
And the world is talking about this Richard Brooks shooting here in Atlanta. It's now the #3 trending topic on Twitter right now. Folks from all over the world reporting on this officer-involved shooting, the 48th officer-involved shooting in the state of Georgia that the GBI has had to investigate since January 1st. All right, right now we want to head over to Hope Ford in Southwest Atlanta, near the location of this officer-involved shooting. And Hope, things are developing really quickly where you are. What are you seeing?
So we did see quite a few people. We moved up a little bit closer, and we saw quite a few people start to run in a different direction. I think now you can probably see a little bit better those officers with the shields out right there. They kind of moved a little bit further up, and that kind of caused that crowd to break up a little bit and start to leave. We have seen a huge group that has left this area. Obviously, still a lot of people here. Right now, since we are a little bit closer, we do see a lot more Atlanta police officers in their riot gear, and then SWAT officers out as well. Move out of the way so you can see those guys on the side right here as well. They're kind of hanging out more towards the back, where you can see the officers with shields are more towards the front of that crowd right there. So there's a little bit of a circle right now. And I believe there's more officers who are walking through the crowd right now toward us right now. and I can hear a lot of people who are yelling in their direction. Can't exactly hear what they're yelling, but there are a few people who are yelling towards them right now. So this is what we're seeing right now. We have seen a big chunk of this group right here leave. There's a couple of people who are, you know, just further back on the sidelines who are kind of just watching, but this, for the most part, what you're seeing in front of us is the most amount of people that are left in this area right now, and that's in between the chevron and you see, we're seeing those officers with their shields are moving forward toward this group. It's causing a little bit of the group to run. We're not seeing them throw anything. We're not seeing them throw tear gas or anything like that. They're just walking forward, which is something that we've seen several times before. Whenever there have been curfews. There's not a curfew right now, but they have been just standing there for the last couple of hours, and now that that fire is out and this group has still been out here, now they're starting to walk forward, and that's causing people to run out of the way right now. So those police officers are moving forward. You're seeing they're throwing we don't know where it came from, but there were a couple of people who were throwing something towards those officers right now. So they're just trying to move forward right now. And you can see a couple of people who are still having their signs out here as they were continuing the protest. So
and hope if you can hear me.
Like go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, we're just seeing those officers right now. They're moving towards this other police line where those vehicles are right now. So the crowd is kind of just looking at them.
So it doesn't look like they're trying to clear out the area. They're just getting through.
They were moving through the area, and you actually heard a couple of people out here who were saying, "Oh, they're just going over there." So I think that's what they were expecting. They were expecting them to clear them out of this area, but it looks like they were just moving, trying to get through them, through that crowd in a as safe as possible at that point. So there's a lot of yelling.
And it seems like the protesters
there's a lot of yelling going on
here
right now. Yeah, we are seeing a few out of that crowd who are still coming toward this police line, and they are yelling at the police officers right now. Some of them are chants, some of them are profanity, so I apologize if you hear any of that come out over the microphone right now. A lot of cameras are out as they're filming you know, what's happening out here. That's what we've seen throughout several of these protests at this point in time.
Do you have a sense of how large this crowd is?
Comparatively to what it was earlier, it is a lot smaller than it was earlier. Right now, I mean, it's probably maybe 100 to 200 people who are in this area, and as you can hear, they're all chanting, you know, hands up, don't shoot, at this point in time. There is another group who is on the other side who is kind of slower and behind, not walking towards them. Right now, they're more just staying in the background. So, so that's what we're seeing at this point in time.
I know we've seen R.I.P. Rayshard painted near the Wendy's where he died, or where he was fatally shot. But have you seen any family members or anyone who knows him among the protesters? We talked earlier to his cousin, and then also heard from the family attorney. Any indication that his family members or anyone who knows him is in that crowd?
We did talk to Rayshard Brooks. His cousin was still on the other side when we were closer to the Wendy's earlier today when it was still on fire. We did talk to her for just a few minutes, and she said that, you know, some of her family was still out there. They were upset. She seemed pretty upset at the time, and since we had talked to the family earlier, I didn't you know, try to press her or anything like that, or put a camera in her face at that moment, because she didn't seem very much like she wanted to talk to anyone at that point in time. But other than that, I haven't seen any other family members. but for the most part, we have stayed pretty far back for a majority of the day, especially as that fire was going on earlier today. So now we see what we're seeing now is some of the protesters have moved over here because a lot of the officers went behind that line. So some of the protesters have come over here to this area, and they're continuing to chant and to stand at that line with some of those officers that we're seeing right there.
And Hope, I know you've been moving around quite a bit just to follow all these developments that have been happening this evening. And for our viewers tonight, this is happening in real time. So if you happen to hear any profanity or see any profanity on any of the signs there, we apologize in advance. We're trying as hard as we can to try to not have that in the shot or have you hear any of that. But again, this is a developing situation, so please bear with us as we cover this for you. And Hope, just give us a sense of where you are in terms of how close you are to the Wendy's location.
You broke up a little bit there, Faith, but I think I heard you ask me how close we are to the Wendy's. So the Wendy's is to our right at this point, past a couple of traffic lights. We are more towards the Chevron and the Texaco that are on one side of it right now. So we're not too far away. We can still see some of the smoke, and we can still smell some of the smoke now. But now that fire's been out here for about 30 minutes at this point in time.
And it seems like the protesters are turning their attention directly at police right now. Before, they seemed to be just milling about, but now with the riot officers moving through, or the SWAT officers moving through, it seems they've directed their attention to them. Is that what you're seeing too?
I'm sorry, one more time, directed their attention towards
the police officers who've just moved through, and so they're paying attention to the officers now instead of just milling about. Is that what you're seeing?
So earlier they were pretty far away. They were on the other side, so I can't really tell you if they were or weren't interacting with the officers the same way they are right now. We do know whenever they started to move through, a lot of the protesters ran off, and then a lot of them came, some of them came over to this area. And then there's still a little group that's behind us that are just hanging out and filming and